Hi, this video is going to show you how to conduct research online in order to find general articles, academic articles, and books for a research project. So I'm going to start by talking about searches in general. So you should be able to see here that we're on a page to do a Google search. There are several search engines that you can use when you're looking for general information. Google is certainly one of the best. And you can take your topic and look for general articles and so on your topic. So I picked a topic to use, or a couple of topics to use to demonstrate today. So that topic is sex education. So I'm going to type in sex education, and then we'll see what we come up with. So this is one of the potential problems with a Google search, is that sex education apparently is the name of a drama that's going on right now. So when you do a general Google search, there's no guarantee that the kinds of information that comes up are going to be the kind of information that you were looking for, right? Generally, Google is going to put at the top of the list things that are most popular, but what is most popular is not necessarily what is most accurate or what is most useful for your research project. And this is the reason why doing a general search like this is going to be limited in how much it can help you, depending somewhat on the topic. So as we can see, all of these first few hits are about this show called Sex Education. So the search didn't work out too well. Well, here finally we get to something that looks more like it could be useful. Sex education from Planned Parenthood Action, quality sex education taught by trained educators. So that would be something that could potentially be relevant to looking at sex education for AIDS awareness in schools and so on. But as we can see, general Google search can be very hit or miss in terms of what somebody finds. I'll also note that there's a huge number of hits. I mean, look at this. That's something, God, is that like over 2 billion hits? I mean, how would you even begin to know what to do with that? So there's several points here. The first is to realize that this kind of Google search can be of limited use when you're doing research. And the reasons are that the search may throw up way too many hits for you to actually look through. The hits that you get may not be relevant to your research topic. The hits that you get are based on popularity. They're not based on accuracy. They can be highly political. They can be highly unreliable. In other words, no one is vetting these results to make sure that the information that you get from these sites, if you then clicked on them, would be accurate, right? So this is all problematic. Now we can change the search to try to get a better selection of hits, maybe sex education in schools, and see if that works better. So okay, so this is more promising. We see scholarly articles for sex education in schools, sex and HIV education in schools. That looks promising, and so on. So you can play around with your search terms to try to narrow them down and to try to make sure that you're actually finding stuff that's relevant. But we still have the same general problem. We still have 400 million results. My goodness. Okay. Most of which are really not going to be helpful, and who in the world would have time to look at all of them either. So I don't want to say that doing a Google search is might not be a little bit helpful, but it should not be the primary way that you go about finding articles and information for a research paper for university classes, okay? So one thing before we move on from Google searches is that I want to point out to you that there is also a more specialized search engine from Google, which is called Google Scholar, right? You can see it right here, Google Scholar. If you click on Google Scholar, it allows you to do a search on a topic, but instead of drawing from everything out there that's been published on the internet, regardless of quality, Google Scholar will only throw up hits for articles or books that are academic. In other words, there's some vetting here in terms of what you will see. So let's try that same search and let's try sex education, and I think you'll see we get very different kinds of hits. So let's see, we can sex education in schools, in public schools, in high school, sex education curriculum, depending on what you want to look at. So let's stay general, we'll just say sex education in schools for now. So now you can see we have still a lot of hits, but not as many. Now we have 2 million hits. Jeez, that's still a lot. Okay, so now this, as you'll see, these are actual, generally actual research articles or come from government organizations. In some of these cases, you can click on a link and it will take you to the actual article. This seems to be a case. It takes you actually to the NIH website. And here's an article, Sex and HIV Education in Schools. And there's just a short article here. Okay, so let's go back. So Google Scholar can be very helpful for general searches, but there is a downside to Google Scholar. And the downside to Google Scholar is that there's no guarantee that the articles and so on that you find here are necessarily available to you for free, right? So if you go through the UHD library to find articles, instead of Google Scholar, the UHD library will, you'll be signed in, and UHD library will generally be able to get you to the articles for free so that you can read them entirely, you can download them, and so on. If you go to Google Scholar, this is open to the general public. You have not signed into Google Scholar as a UHD student, so they don't know that UHD has paid for you to have access to this information. So what that means is that any articles on here that are paid content from a journal, right? If you go through Google Scholar, it will ask you to pay for that content. Whereas if you go through UHD, that content will be free as long as you are signed in. The reason being that the university has paid already for you to have access to these journals. So I wanted you to know that Google Scholar exists. It may still be helpful in throwing up some links that are worth looking at and so on. But again, it is not the primary way that I would do research for a paper for college classes. So, but it's good to know that it's here. And if we go back here, well, never mind. It looks like there's a few ways that you might be able to narrow down the search. But really the university setup is much better. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. All right. So now we are going to the UHD library. Okay, so the UHD library should be the starting point for your research for college papers. There are two ways in which you're going to use the library resources. One is that you're going to go to the catalog and use the library catalog. This is what you will do to find books on your topic. The next thing that you'll do is you will go and you will use library databases. And that will point you towards journal articles that will be helpful for your research. So we are going to start today with the library catalog. And then we just click here, search the library catalog. So if you want to do a detailed search, what I would suggest is not simply typing something in the box here, but instead clicking here on advanced search, because that gives you more options to get you to the kind of material you're actually looking for. So we're going to click on advanced search. Okay, so in the advanced search, you'll want to keep this on library catalog. Then you can put the field search term that you want. So we can put sex education. We could put school. And then maybe we want to say, well, we're really only interested in sex education in the United States, or it could be something narrower, like in Texas or something like that. So let's start with United States. Okay, so before we move on, I want to point out that you can change these terms. You don't have to say, I want this term, sex education, and this term, and this term. What that means is the catalog search is only going to show you books that have all three of these terms in them. You can use something like or, right? So if you're looking for, let's say, I'm interested in books that talk about either plague or pandemic or epidemic or something like that. In other words, if you have several terms that might be used to say the same thing, you could use the or function, right? I am looking for articles about sex education in schools in the United States or in Texas, right? If it mentions Texas, that would be good too. Or let's just say, Texas is part of the United States, but you could say, I am looking for information on sex education in Texas or New York or something like that. Okay, so that would be when you would choose or. That would mean that the search would show you books that have the term sex education in them and then have the term school in them and then either contain the word United States or contain the word Texas or contain the word New York or something like that. So that should get you more hits if you have a narrow topic. So or is something that you would use if there's several different words that could be used for your topic. So, yeah, okay. Not is also an option here. This isn't something you're going to use very often, but it could come up. So for instance, when we did the Google search, right? and I put in sex education, I got a lot of hits for this Netflix series called Sex Education, basically a movie, right? And I don't want to see those hits about the movie. That's not what I'm looking for. That's not relevant. So what I could do is I could say, I could put as my search term, find sex education, and then I could say, you know, not film or not movie or not Netflix or something like that, to make sure that I exclude any hits that are actually about the movie. One of the times I use this, for instance, is when I was researching the down low, right? So if I'm looking at the down low and I keep getting tons and tons of hits about Oprah and the show that Oprah did about the down low, and I don't need to see any more of those. I don't want works about Oprah. I could put in, use the search term, you know, HIV, and then down low, and then not Oprah. And while we're on the subject, I should mention that here, let's add a term. AIDS. So, can you put AIDS? You can put AIDS, but here's my recommendation to you. Instead of putting AIDS, put HIV. Okay? And the reason is this. The word AIDS can stand for autoimmune deficiency syndrome, the disease, basically, right? But the word AIDS has other meanings in the English language, right? Like a politician has AIDS. Well, okay, actually that could go both ways. But I mean, like, the people who work for him are his aides, right? AIDS, not capitalized. So if you just type in the word AIDS and use that as your search term, you will get responses about the disease, but also responses where the word aid or AIDS is used in a different sense. And those hits will then not be relevant. If you use the search term HIV instead of AIDS, you will avoid that problem. Okay, so we said we're looking for works that talk about sex education in school in the United States and HIV. So material type. Let's say I am looking for, right now, I want to find books. I'm going to click on books. You can leave it on any language. Most of the hits that you'll get will be in English, but occasionally you'll get something in a different language. So if for some reason you were looking for information from a different language, you could narrow down that field. And then start date and end date. Let's say this is a topic over which change happens quickly, right? And maybe I don't feel that any books published more than 10 years ago are still relevant. So depending on your topic, you might put a range limit on the start date of anything you're looking for. So for instance, I don't want, oops, let's see. I can't seem to get this to work, actually. Oh, I guess I just typed it in, sorry. Okay, so let's say it's 2020 now. Maybe I only want to see works published after 2010. Or maybe I'll be generous and I say I'll look at any work published after from 2000 onwards. Anything before that maybe is going to be irrelevant. So again, that depends on your topic. It might be that everything is relevant and you don't put in a start date. It might be that only things published in the last 5 years are relevant. You have to think about that logically and decide. And one of your choices might be to start by looking for more recent material, and then if you don't find anything, you can expand your search by getting rid of the start date or changing the start date. So now that we've set some basic parameters for our search, let's see what we get. Okay, so we got 9 results for books that contain all of these terms. So here's one book, Too Hot to Handle, A Global History of Sex Education. So let's look at this. We're going to open this up. All right. So one of the things that we can see when we look on this, at this, is eBook Central. The full text is available online as an electronic book. So this is good news. If you were writing about sex education and you are working from home or from a computer at any rate, then all you have to do is click on eBook Central and you automatically get access to this book. So let's look at the details here. We can see there's some subjects to look at, and sometimes these can be useful to look at in case we say, hey, sex instruction for teenagers, history. Let me click on that and see if there's other books that also fall into this same category. That can be a shortcut to finding other works of a similar kind. Or let's see, education, teaching methods and materials, health and sexuality. Maybe that's a subject I would like to find out more about. So I could click on that. And, oh, I guess it makes me do another search. Oh, well, that turned out to not be very useful because it looks like there's only one book that was in that category. So, but in theory, there might have been other books that also fell into this category, in which case I would have used this one book to find the others. So, but this particular case, that didn't end up helping. Let's see if we can go back in our search. Okay. Oops. I went back too far. Okay, so now there's also a description of the book, and you'll see that in the description of the book and its contents, the terms that I put into the search appear. So we can see that sex education comes up a lot. We can also see that the term United States comes up, and HIV should come up somewhere here, since that was one of our search terms. Although I don't immediately see it. Oh, here we go. I don't know why it's not highlighted, but at any rate, it does talk about that. So you may want to look at the description, and if you look closely, you'll see, well, it does talk about HIV and AIDS. Is that the kind of thing that you were looking for or not? So sometimes reading the description can help you decide if the book is going to be relevant or not. So let's say you do decide that this is relevant, or you want to have a closer look at it. You come back up here to full text, right? Availability, eBook Central, and you click on this. Then you have to sign in. And here is the book. So in some cases, you may be allowed to download the book, part or all of it, to help as a PDF, so you can highlight it and things like that, or you could print it out. It looks like this allows you to copy 25 pages, maybe print 25 pages, and so on. But you can also read the entire book online, and you can also highlight and things like that while you're reading online. So if you just click read online, it basically loads the book, and you just use the tools here to navigate through the book, right? So over here, you see you have a table of contents, and you can go, let's say, oh, I really want to read, you know, here, Chapter 4, Right to Knowledge, Cultural Diversity and Sex Education in the Age of AIDS. Wow, that looks perfect. So let's say you click on that, and that takes you to this chapter. And if that's the only chapter that you're interested in, you might be able to just download that one chapter, right? Here, or let's see, PDF, chapter download, and then download that chapter to your computer. But you can also highlight, take notes, and things like that on the page. So you can explore this on your own, but the point is that electronic books are available to you to read on your computer and take notes on your computer and so on. Okay, so we're going back to our original search. Let's run that search again. Okay, so we found 9 results, and we looked at this first one, Too Hot to Handle, A Global History of Sex Education. And we found that this book was in fact available online for UHD students, and you can use that then for your research paper. Let's see. Now here, there's this, Tools for Teaching Comprehensive Human Sexuality Education, Lessons, Activities, Teaching Strategies, and so on for grades 6 through 12. So let's click on that. And there's a couple of versions available. This says UH and MD Anderson Library. So that is the UH main library, okay? But in fact, let's see, this may be available for UHD students electronically. It is, in fact. So UH Downtown, it says click here for access, right? So sometimes the UH main campus has a hard copy of the book, and we have an electronic copy of the book. Now, it's also useful to know that, hold on, let's go back. Oh, not back, go here. Okay, if you were looking at a book and you wanted a hard copy of the book, okay, and this was a book that was not available electronically for UHD students, right? Then you can have the book sent over from the UH main campus to the UH downtown campus. Under normal circumstances, this is something that you could do as long as you allowed enough time for the book to arrive. So I believe they say it should take about 4 business days after you submit a request for the book to be delivered to the UH Downtown Library. So if you did want to do that, you would click here on Get It. And let's see. You can see that the book is there in the library and so on. And, you know, they changed the way this whole thing looks. So maybe that, oh, okay. So to check for request options, you need to sign in first. That's what we're missing. Okay. So sign in UH Downtown. Okay, so Now I'm actually signed in to the library. So now that I'm signed in, when I click on this that says get it, under the section that says get it, I now see a place that I can click that says request. And if I click on this, this allows me to ask for the book to be sent over to UHD. So I can click on pickup location and I can pick where I want it sent to. So the University of Houston downtown, our main library for downtown campus is the Dykes Library. So we would click on that. And then you can also put like, don't bother sending it to me, like if, I don't know, the semester is over or something like that, you could put a cancellation date if you want to, okay? And then you would click send request, which I'm not going to do because I don't actually want them to send the book to me. But that's how it would work if you wanted to have a book sent over. Now, a lot more and more books are available electronically, and you will be able to see them electronically by clicking on the UHD access buttons here. However, you might find, depending on your topic, that at some point you wanted to see actual physical books that are not available electronically and that are not in the UHD library, but are only in the UH main library or one of the other UH system campus libraries. Sometimes they have larger libraries for physical books than we do. So if that were the case, again, once you found the book, you click on get it, and then you'd click on request, and then you'd say you want it delivered to the Dykes Library. And again, that only works if you have first signed in to the library, so they know who's making the request and so on. All right, let's go back. Oh, I didn't want to go that far back. All right, oh wait, here we do. Here we go. Let's see, I'm just going to run the search again. The navigation here is, I must say, is a little awkward in the new system. Okay. So sex education school, United States, HIV. Okay, this is very odd because I just ran the exact same search and I now have 11 items. So I don't know why that happened, but okay. So we looked at this, Too Hot to Handle, which was an electronic book. We looked at Tools for Teaching Comprehensive Human Sexuality. Again, there was an electronic version of that. Once we opened this up, we found there was a physical book at UH Maine, and then there was an electronic version for UHD. So Social Work Speaks, National Association of Social Workers, policy statements. So why is that relevant? I don't know. So we would have to click on this and then go down the page to see where this comes up. And we can see early childhood care and services, education of children and youths, healthcare policy, HIV and AIDS, schools, school violence. So what we can see when we look at this is that this book is not actually relevant. It does talk about education, it does talk about HIV, and it does talk about schools, but not all together. It's not about HIV education in schools. So this popped up because it had all those search terms in it, but it is not in fact relevant. So I'm just going to go to the next result. Victims of sexual assault and abuse resources and responses for individuals and families. That does not sound relevant. Gender equality and education from international comparative perspectives. That's probably not relevant either. Gay, lesbian, and transgender issues in education programs, policies, and practices. Now that could definitely be relevant. So let's look. We can see again that this is available as an ebook for UHD students. And if we go down to the description, we can see that this does talk about schools, here we go. Let's say school-based program to improve life skills and prevent HIV infection in multicultural transgender youth in Hawaii. So there's a specific chapter in here, at least one specific chapter in here that is on the topic. So you don't necessarily have to read the whole book, but you could find that one chapter. You could download that one chapter and so on, right? So you could say, okay, that's another thing that's relevant. Let's see what else we found. Children, education, and health, international perspectives on law and policy. So again, that sounds like it's relevant. You could go through and look at specific chapters and see which chapters. Here we go, HIV, AIDS, inclusion, and the law in American public schools. That sounds perfect, right? So again, the whole book may not be relevant, but some of the chapters may be relevant. So terrific. Next. Health and sexuality education in schools, the process of social change. Awesome. So this clearly looks relevant as well. So anyway, I'm not going to keep going through the list, but you can see that we found a number of books that could be useful in a research project on sex education and HIV in the school system. All right, so this has been a long video, so I am going to stop here and pick up in a separate video on how to do a database search.